Everyone has to cut the occasional curve, and sometimes it's just faster and easier to do it by hand. That's why the old-timers invented this. This is a bow saw. It was sometimes also called a turning saw. It's beautiful. It cuts wonderfully well, even for delicate work. And it's inexpensive because you can make it yourself from a few wood scraps. The old-timers knew what they were doing. But as tends to happen in this industrial era, we took something that was nearly perfect and we ruined it. This is a modern coping saw. It's what modern woodworkers use to cut curves by hand, and it sucks. It's not just that it's ugly compared to the other saw. It's not even the fact that you have to buy this instead of making it yourself. These just do not cut very well because the design is flawed. You see, the metal frame is not stiff enough, and the tightening mechanism is not robust enough to tension this blade properly. This thing needs to be piano string tight so that it's not going to bend and twist and flex all over the place when you're trying to cut around a curve. Listen to this. You hear that dull twang? It's not tight enough. This is what a blade should sound like. That's why this saw cuts so much better than this saw. Now, this design flaw isn't new to tool makers. In fact, there is a company that's making coping saws that can be properly tensioned. The frame of this one is different. See how it's built like a steel truss? The tensioning mechanism is also designed to pull really hard on that blade. This saw cuts as well as the old style saw, but this one costs $170, and this one can be built for about $25. In fact, I would argue that the older, less expensive, and I think much more attractive design is superior to the new high-tech steel truss design. A friend of mine, Mike Taylor, thought so too. So he ran a test, hanging some weights on a fully tensioned blade, and he found that the wooden saw deflected less than the fancy steel one, and it completely blew away the common coping saw. So not only does the old design tension the blade better, but it's lighter, it's better balanced, and it's more comfortable to work with. I never thought a $25 tool could beat a $170 tool, but this does. And the best part is, you can make this yourself. Let me show you how. You'll need a few pieces of hardware, which is where the $25 goes. I'll link to this kit below the video. It comes from a small family business in Missouri that is always developing great ideas like this for woodworkers like you and me. The kit comes with the key components, including turned wooden handles, so you don't even need a lathe. But most importantly, you get a set of detailed instructions with photos and templates. Now, you will need to supply the wood, but it doesn't take much. Any hardwood will do: oak, maple, cherry, ash, whatever you have. Just be sure the grain is straight, because that's what gives this saw its incredible strength. I took a copy of the paper pattern and I attached it to a piece of wood to make a more durable template, because I think I might make several of these for gifts. All the hole layouts are on it, which makes things really easy. I used a drill press and a Forstner bit to create my mortises. You could do this by hand with a drill and a chisel if you're careful to keep things nice and square. Now it's time to cut out that cool traditional shape on the arms. I'm sticking them together with tape so I can cut them both at the same time. Now, how do you make a coping saw without a coping saw? Well, I just used a bandsaw. A scroll saw would also work. Or you could suffer through with your crappy modern coping saw. It'll help you to appreciate the traditional one once it's complete. I cleaned everything up with some files and rasps and sandpaper. The shapes don't have to be perfect. In fact, a little variation is part of the character of a homemade tool. That's what I really love about doing projects like this. I get a premium tool that works really well and it looks beautiful, plus I get the satisfaction of making it myself. I decided to go with power in this next step because I like to use my big, beautiful table saw as much as possible. But you could easily do this by hand. This is a simple jig, which is described in the instructions. It makes it possible to cut the tapers on either side of the arms. This makes the tool lighter and more graceful. Again, you could do this with any number of other tools: a spoke shave, a sanding drum on a drill press, even a belt sander. But this way is faster and more consistent. The handles will require some prep work. There are a pair of threaded washers that needed to be sanded on one side to help give them some extra grip. Then they go on the pins. Here's a trick I like to use to apply epoxy. I turn a little sandwich bag inside out and I squeeze the two-part epoxy near one of the corners. Then I turn the inside back in, and I use my fingers to thoroughly mix it up. Finally, I trim off the corner of the bag, and I have a handy little dispenser that puts the epoxy exactly where I need it without a mess. It works wonderfully. Once the handles are assembled, I can put on the blade and measure for the stretcher. You have to measure it this way to account for any variations in the thickness of the shoulders down by the handles. The instructions tell you how much to add for your tenons, and the tenons are cut with a table saw or a router table or by hand if you prefer. You want a friction fit, not too tight, but not too loose. With that done, you can wrap the included line around the top of the saw's arms and tie it with a neatly trimmed knot. All that's left is this little scrap of wood, which you can make as nice as you want it to be. It merely slips between the strands of line, and as you twist it, it becomes a tensioning mechanism that will pull your blade tighter than you ever thought possible. In fact, you can break the saw if you get too crazy, but you're going to know you're going too far. The first cut is always the best part. But instead of clamping my wood low in the vise where I have to bend over, I'm going to use this traditional bird's mouth platform. It gets your work up where you can see it, and it puts everything in a very comfortable position, especially for fine work. This is described in the kit's instructions too. So you not only get the hardware and the turn handles and the detailed instructions with all the photos and the templates, but you also get instructions for extra jigs like this. And you're supporting both this channel and the wonderful folks at Taylor TOOLWORKS. By the way, they also have a lot of other kits for making fine tools in your own shop. These make great weekend projects for yourself or to give as gifts. And the result is a tool that not only performs as good or better than many of the high-end ones on the market, but you can say you made it yourself. Check out the kits at the link below. See you next time.